The crowd's roar was deafening, but Elvis barely heard it. The lights were white fire on his face, the sweat ran down his neck, and yet he wasn't thinking about the song. He was thinking about her. Front row, third seat from the left. She hadn't moved since the show began. Not screaming, not dancing, just staring. Eyes fixed, cold, unblinking. He strummed a final chord and without breaking rhythm gave a single, sharp wink toward his guitarist. James Burton didn't miss a beat. He nodded, barely noticeable, and the tempo changed. The drums softened. The crowd thought it was part of the act. It was. To them, it was magic Elvis commanding the room. But to the band, it was code. That wink meant one thing: someone dangerous was too close. The fans screamed louder, unaware that security was already moving. Two men in plain suits slipped through the crowd, hands close to their belts. The music swelled again, suspicious minds. The irony wasn't lost on Elvis. He smiled that famous grin, but inside something twisted tight. The memory of earlier nights came back, the threats, the letters, the faces he couldn't forget. Fame had given him everything and invited everyone. He'd learned to recognize a certain look, that mix of devotion and darkness. The look that said, "I love you enough to destroy you." And now there it was again. He took a step back from the edge of the stage, never missing a note. The code was working, the band stayed calm, the song continued, but every man on stage was watching the same spot. He could feel the tension spread like static. To the crowd, this was Elvis in control. But under the lights, it was a battle of nerves. He caught James's eyes again, a subtle nod, meaning keep it going. Elvis shifted the microphone, forcing a smile even as his chest tightened. Thank you very much," he said, his voice steady. The fans screamed back, the sound crashing over him like thunder. Only the band knew it wasn't gratitude, it was a signal for the next step. Behind him, the bass dropped to half-tempo. The drummer adjusted his sticks, another silent code. Security was now at the front barrier. She still hadn't moved. Just that stare unbroken. For a moment, Elvis wondered if he was imagining it. Maybe it was just another fan, someone lost in the music. But his instincts said otherwise. Years of playing to packed halls had taught him what normal looked like, and this wasn't it. He turned away, pretending to focus on the keyboard, but his pulse didn't slow. He hated this part, the feeling that danger could wear a smile. The wink had started as a joke years ago. Back when the crowds were smaller, the band used it to signal little things. A broken amp, a missed cue, a joke mid-song. But after a night in Chicago, when someone threw a bottle that missed his face by inches, the wink changed meaning. It became their lifeline. 1, motion, safety. 2, watch the left. A slow blink, code red. Tonight it was just 1, but his gut told him that was enough. He looked back at the woman again. Still frozen, still staring. Then a sudden movement. She reached into her coat. Elvis's heart kicked hard. The drummer saw it too. His right hand lifted, a prearranged sign for pause. But Elvis shook his head. Keep playing. If they stopped now, panic would spread. He sang louder, voice strong but eyes alert. Caught in a trap, I can't walk out. The irony hit him like a punch. That line had never felt more real. Security moved faster now. One of them climbed the edge of the stage. Elvis stepped back, pretending to interact with the band, keeping the illusion alive. To the audience, it was pure performance. To him, it was survival. Seconds later, the woman's hand came out empty, just a crumpled photo, folded, worn, kissed at the corners. She pressed it to her chest as security pulled her away. Her face broke into tears. Elvis froze. The song ended on instinct alone. Applause erupted like fireworks, drowning everything else. He turned to James and gave a half smile, the kind that says we made it through again, but his eyes were far away. That wink, that tiny motion, had saved him once more. But tonight, for some reason, it didn't feel like victory. As the lights dimmed and the curtain began to fall, Elvis kept his head slightly bowed, microphone still in hand. Because somewhere deep down, he knew The danger wasn't always out there in the crowd. Sometimes it followed him home. It started years before that Vegas night ever happened. Long before the wink became a signal, before the band knew what to look for. Back then, Elvis still believed the danger came from somewhere out there. Reporters, tabloids, maybe a jealous husband. He didn't yet understand how fame could twist ordinary love into obsession. After his '68 comeback special, things changed. The world had missed him, and when he returned, they wanted all of him. The letters started out sweet, notes from fans thanking him for the music, for hope, for memories. But slowly a darker tone crept in. Some letters said they could hear him speaking to them through the TV. Others promised to meet him beyond the grave. One came wrapped in a black ribbon. The handwriting was uneven, the words shaky but deliberate. "If I can't have you, nobody will." At first, Elvis laughed it off. He joked with the guys, saying fame attracted a few lost souls. But that smile didn't last long. In one interview from the early '70s, a friend said Elvis began scanning every crowd the way a soldier scans a battlefield. He'd step on stage, take one slow look around, and spot potential trouble faster than anyone else. That instinct, part paranoia, part survival, became his quiet burden. The first real scare came in 1971. A man managed to get through the backstage hallway, shouting that he was sent by the Lord to deliver a message. Elvis was mid-costume change when he heard the noise. Security caught the man before he reached him, but the look in his eyes, glassy, desperate, stayed with Elvis for months. He told Sonny West later that night, "I don't want to hurt nobody, man, but one of these days, somebody's gonna come at me for real." That's when the signals began. It started with something simple. A tap on the mic stand meant watch the left side. A hand brushed through the hair, security, stay close. And the wink that meant everything stopped. The band knew what to do, the lights knew what to do, the guards moved. To the audience, it just looked like showmanship, Elvis playing cool. But to his inner circle, it was a shield. Still, it wasn't easy living like that. He wanted to connect with the crowd, to feel safe in the music again. But with every new city came new letters, new faces, new fear. He began keeping certain fans' photos in a folder labeled Watch, not out of hatred, out of protection. There was a woman who followed him from Memphis to Nashville, then to LA. She'd find his hotel, leave notes under his door. Every message started the same way. "I'm the one who understands you." When she appeared outside Graceland one night, barefoot and crying, Elvis didn't call the police. He brought her water, told her to go home, and said softly, "You can't save me by hurting yourself." She smiled and whispered, "You'll remember me." He never forgot that face again. The danger wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was heartbreak dressed as devotion. His bandmates started to notice the toll. Between sets, Elvis would sit quietly, guitar in his lap, eyes fixed on the curtain before him. "Man," he'd say, "I just want to sing without wonderin' who's gonna run at me next." They'd tell him he was safe. He'd nod, but deep down he didn't believe it. In 1973, during the Aloha from Hawaii special, one of the most watched performances in television history, he performed with calm confidence. But if you look closely, you can see it. Small gestures, near invisible to the untrained eye. A quick glance toward the drummer. A slight tug at his cuff. The code in action. Even miles away, through the television screen, he never stopped guarding himself. Behind that white jumpsuit and brilliant smile lived a man who understood the fragility of fame, how easily adoration could turn into something else. The men closest to him began memorizing the patterns like commandments. One finger snap, shift the lighting. Touch of the ring, alert the guards. That wink, full alert. Sometimes the code meant nothing happened at all. Sometimes it prevented something that no one ever heard about. But every signal came from the same place, fear that the love he'd inspired could one day consume him. Elvis never blamed the fans. He once told Red West, "They love what they see, not what I am." And that truth broke him in ways few understood. He'd walk off stage to thunderous applause, yet the moment the curtain dropped, he'd fall silent, scanning every face backstage as if one might hide a weapon. That kind of fear eats at a man's peace. His friends began to notice he prayed before almost every show now, not for success, but for calm. "Lord," he'd whisper, "keep me steady out there." Vegas only magnified it. Those shows were intimate, smaller rooms, closer eyes, people reaching out. He could feel their breath when they sang along. But intimacy is a double-edged sword. The same closeness that made the fans feel connected made him feel exposed. Every time he felt that chill crawl up his spine, he'd use the code. Sometimes the band would follow with small musical shifts, a slower bridge, a louder chorus to give security time to move. It was elegant, silent teamwork born from fear and trust. Yet beneath all that, Elvis wrestled with guilt. He hated feeling suspicious of the same people who gave him love. He hated knowing he needed protection just to do what he loved most. But the world had changed around him. The price of fame was no longer just privacy, it was safety. By the mid-70s, the wink wasn't a choice, it was instinct. His band respected it. They never spoke of it outside their circle. To them, that unspoken system was proof of how deeply connected they were to him. It was their language, a promise that they'd never let anything happen to him on their watch. Still, there were nights when the signals weren't enough. Moments when the tension in the air couldn't be explained away. And one of those nights, under the bright lights of Las Vegas, would change everything. It wasn't just about a fan anymore. It was about a past face returning. A face Elvis recognized. A face he wished he hadn't. He'd feel the same chill that once warned him of danger, but this time it came with something else. Something that made his hands shake and his voice falter for the first time on stage. Because this time, the code wasn't protecting him from a stranger. It was warning him about someone he once trusted. The Vegas Strip shimmered that night like it always did, gold lights, neon signs, the hum of a city that never slept. Inside the Hilton showroom, though, time felt slower, tighter. Elvis had been quiet before the show, packing near the curtain, tapping his ring against his thumb. The band knew that rhythm. It wasn't nerves, it was instinct. When the music started, he walked out smiling, the same easy swagger, the same charm. But the band could see it. Something was off behind those eyes. Halfway through the set, he froze, just for a second. Front row, a woman in a dark dress staring straight at him, her eyes familiar, haunting. It took him a moment to place her. Years ago, backstage in Nashville, she'd handed him a note, a trembling hand, a soft voice. "You saved me once, I'll repay you someday." He'd smiled, thanked her, never thought about it again. But now she was here, and that same promise looked like something else, like a warning. He felt the chill crawl up his spine. The band kept playing unaware. He gave the smallest wink, one that only James Burton could see. The signal spread through the band in seconds. The rhythm shifted just enough to sound like a flourish, but everyone on that stage knew exactly what it meant. Elvis kept singing, pretending to lose himself in the music, but his eyes never left her. Every time she moved, his heart kicked harder. He could see her mouth forming words, silent, rehearsed, deliberate. James looked to him again, another wink. Security started moving quietly from the sides. The woman's hand disappeared beneath her purse. Elvis felt a surge of dread, so strong it made his throat tighten. Still, he didn't stop. He sang through it, each line trembling with control. "I can't help falling in love with you." The irony wasn't lost on him, not anymore. The band followed the plan. They stretched the bridge, giving security time. But she was already standing now, eyes wide, shouting something no one could hear over the music. Then she stepped forward. Two guards caught her arm, but she yanked free. The crowd gasped, unsure if it was part of the show. Elvis took a step back, microphone still in hand, eyes locked on hers. For a moment, everything went still, the kind of silence that lives between heartbeats. She cried out, voice shaking, "You don't remember me, but I never forgot you." The words cut through the air. One of the guards reached her and pulled her away, but she didn't resist. She just looked at Elvis one last time, tears running down her face. "You said music would keep us safe," she whispered. Elvis couldn't speak. The crowd erupted in confusion and applause, thinking it was some dramatic moment, a piece of theater. But the band knew better. The code had worked again, technically, but it hadn't protected him from the part that hurt most, recognition. He finished the set mechanical, distant. The smile was there, but hollow. He bowed, said his thanks, and walked off before the applause even faded. Backstage, he sat in silence. The others waited for him to speak. He didn't. Finally, Red West said softly, "You did good, E." Elvis just stared at the floor. "That woman," he murmured. "I met her once, years ago, thought she was just another lost soul." Red frowned. "You want us to find out how she got that close?" Elvis shook his head. "No, let her be." He leaned back, eyes distant. "You ever think maybe the danger ain't out there no more? Maybe it's in what we make people feel?" No one answered. He looked at his hands. The same hands that had signed autographs, held microphones, reached out to strangers. And he whispered almost to himself, "We teach M to love a ghost, then we wonder why they haunt us." The room went quiet. Only the faint hum of the stage lights bled through the wall. That night the band gathered after hours. They didn't talk much, but they all agreed something had changed. The code, their secret language, wasn't just about danger anymore. It had become something heavier, something sacred. James rewound the tape of the show later, listening to the small changes. The moment the tempo dropped, the instant Elvis saw her. He told the others, he saved himself again, but it's eaten him up. Elvis didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window of his suite, watching the Vegas skyline flicker like a heartbeat. Somewhere out there, in a city that adored him, a woman was crying because she'd been pulled away from the man she believed she knew. And he couldn't even hate her for it. Because deep down he understood. She wasn't chasing him. She was chasing what he represented, love that never left, hope that never faded. But that kind of devotion, it can turn on you. It can follow you home, into your dreams, into your fears. By sunrise, he called James. "From now on," he said quietly, "the code stays tighter. We trust no one we don't have to, not even the ones that smile." James asked, "You think we'll need it that bad?" Elvis paused. "I think the day I stop needing it is the day I stop baying me." When he walked on stage the next night, his eyes swept the room again, same as always. The crowd cheered, hands reached out, flashbulbs popped. But for the first time, his smile carried something different, not fear, not anger. Just understanding. He sang like a man holding two worlds together, one filled with light, one with shadow. And between them, a single gesture, a wink, to keep him alive. That was the night the code broke, not because it failed, but because it showed him the truth. The greatest danger wasn't the fans, the fame, or the strangers. It was the loneliness of being loved by millions, and truly known by none. After that night, something in Elvis quietly shifted. He didn't speak much about what happened. The newspapers never caught it, and the crowd never suspected, but the people closest to him noticed. He started rehearsing differently, slower, more deliberate. Every move, every gesture, every note became part of something deeper, protection through performance. The code had evolved. It was no longer just about spotting danger. It was about reclaiming control in a life that felt increasingly out of his hands. Music became his armor. He told his band one night, "When I sing, I'm safe. Nothing bad happens when the songs play in." They believed him, because on stage, the man who carried so much fear somehow turned it into beauty. Every wink, every head tilt, every pause between verses became a shared language. To the audience, it was charisma. To his band, it was conversation. To Elvis, it was survival. Over time, the signals became second nature, part of the rhythm of every show. A finger along the mic stand, all clear. A slow exhale into the mic, stay alert. The slight wink, move now. The crowd thought it was style. They never knew it was a heartbeat code between brothers. And yet, even behind all those gestures, there was a sadness he couldn't hide. Because no matter how elaborate the code became, it couldn't protect him from what really hurt, the isolation of being watched but never truly seen. His friends said the code gave him confidence. Maybe it did, but it also reminded him how fragile that confidence really was. He once told Red West, "I trust that wink more than I trust people now." That wasn't arrogance, it was exhaustion. He loved his fans, but fame had turned the simple act of walking on stage into a test of faith. Every night he faced thousands of strangers who felt like family, and yet, he couldn't even look one of them in the eye for too long without wondering who they really were underneath the smile. Still, he kept showing up. He kept singing, kept smiling, kept believing that maybe the next show would feel normal again. And in those rare moments when the music drowned out everything, the noise, the fear, the loneliness, he found peace. It wasn't fame that kept him going. It was that fleeting calm that came between the first note and the last applause. He didn't just build a code, he built a sanctuary. Sometimes, during rehearsals, the band would test him, toss in an accidental cue to see if he'd notice. He always did. He'd grin and say, "You boys can't fool me, I invented this thing." But behind the joke was truth. The code wasn't just a trick, it was how he stayed human in a world that wouldn't let him breathe. Years later, some of his band members would still talk about it with a kind of reverence. James Burton once said, "That wink meant everything. It meant keep him safe. It meant we were his wall." And in a way, that wall was the only thing standing between Elvis and the weight of his own legend. Because as the crowds grew larger, the threats didn't stop. They only changed form. Anonymous calls, strange letters, unpredictable fans at the gates of Graceland. The more loved he became, the more exposed he felt. And yet, night after night, he walked out there again, trusting his instincts, trusting that silent language that had never failed him. There was one moment near the end, a small show just months before his final tour, when a fan fainted near the front row. The band saw him glance to the side, give the smallest nod. Security moved in seconds, as they always did. Then, as the medics helped her up, Elvis stopped the song mid-verse and said softly, "Let her breathe, baby, we all need to breathe." The crowd cheered, thinking it was just another tender moment. But the band knew that wasn't a line for applause. That was a man who'd spent a lifetime gasping for air beneath the weight of being adored. That night when the show ended, he sat in the quiet dressing room and whispered to himself, "The music kept me safe again." Those who knew him best said he began to see every performance as a kind of prayer, one he said out loud through rhythm and melody. And that wink, it was his amen. When he walked out for his last few concerts, he still used the code. Not because of any real threat that night, but because it was the last piece of order left in a chaotic world. The crowd saw grace, he felt safety. The lights blinded him, the music guided him. The code wasn't a secret anymore. It was a ritual of faith between him and the only people who truly understood how fragile that world could be. Even now, decades later, his band members say they still remember the signals by heart. If they were together in a room and someone gave that subtle wink, they'd all still know what to do instinctively, protectively. That's how deep it ran. Because the code wasn't just about fear. It was about trust. About love expressed in silence. About a man who couldn't always say what he felt, so he built a language that said it for him. And maybe that's why the people who were there, the ones who saw him up close, never talk about the danger. They talk about the grace, the calm, the quiet strength that existed in that split second between gesture and response. He may have been the king on stage, but off stage, he was just a man trying to keep the music louder than the fear. And in the end, he did. Because even when the lights faded, the crowd vanished, and the curtain fell, that silent code, that unspoken rhythm, still echoed through the halls of memory. It wasn't just a signal. It was his heartbeat, shared in secret with the only people who ever truly stood beside him. And when the world remembers Elvis Presley, the songs, the voice, the legend, few will know that behind every performance, behind every smile, there lived a code built from love, fear, and faith. The code that made him untouchable. The code that kept him human. The code that let him sing, night after night, even when the world felt too dangerous to face. Because music wasn't just what saved him. It was him. The melody, the message, the armor, all the same thing. And maybe that's the real legacy he left behind. Not just the sound of his voice, but the silence between the notes, the hidden rhythm that protected the man behind the myth. Because behind the spotlight, behind the music that moved millions, lived a man who trusted a simple wink more than the world around him. And maybe that's the lesson Elvis left us with, that sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest truths, and silence can speak louder than fame ever will.